An 18-year-old black boy stood alone in court. No lawyer, no one by his side, and everyone in the room thought the same thing. This kid doesn't stand a chance. Malik Johnson stood there, his hand clenched tightly on the edge of the wooden table. A shaft of light from the high dome above fell onto his oversized, faded suit, handed down from his older brother. He looked small, out of place, like a lone leaf blown straight into the heart of a storm. Judge Margot Reeves, known for her harsh sentences and colder stare, leaned into the microphone. "Are you refusing legal representation, Mr. Johnson?" Her voice was soft, but laced with unmistakable disdain. "You're being charged with grand theft auto and resisting arrest. This isn't some game for you to practice in." A few quiet chuckles rippled through the courtroom. Prosecutor Grayson, sharp in his tailored suit, gave a slight nod, amused. A boy representing himself? This would be too easy. Malik swallowed hard, but when he lifted his head, there was no fear in his eyes, only focus. "Your Honor," he said steadily, "I understand the seriousness of the charges, and I've come prepared." Silence fell. Even the judge hesitated for a beat. No one had expected him to speak like that. They had written him off as reckless, impulsive. But Malik hadn't come here to be pitied. He came to reveal the truth, in a place where justice often arrived too late, buried beneath layers of prejudice. And in that exact moment, everyone watching understood. This wasn't just a trial. This was a battle between a young black man and a system that had already decided he was guilty, long before the hearing even began. Malik Johnson wasn't the kind of person you looked at and thought, "He's going to win." He was lanky, underweight, his dark skin weathered by the sun. His shoes were worn thin, and the oversized suit he wore kept slipping past his wrists. He'd spent the entire morning adjusting the sleeves. When he walked into the courtroom, the eyes from the gallery slid past him, like he was just another black teenager who'd wandered into a justice system that had never been just. But there was one thing no one could see. The sleepless nights spent studying legal books at the public library. The dozens of case files he photocopied, highlighted, annotated page by page. He wasn't here to beg his way out. He was here to challenge the assumptions that had locked generations like him into a silent fate. That if you're poor, young, and black, then you can't possibly understand the law, let alone beat it. Malik had no lawyer, no courtroom experience, no family in the back row offering support. But he had his mind, he had the truth, and most importantly, he had a goal: to make every single person judging him stop and listen. When the judge gave him that doubtful look, when the prosecutor smirked with quiet arrogance, Malik simply bowed his head. No reaction, no anger. There was a strange control in him. Like every condescending glance was fuel that steadied his resolve. He wasn't standing there to plead. He was standing there to say something simple, with all the calm an 18-year-old could possibly muster. "I may not be what you expected, but I know exactly what I'm doing." And that's when the room began to fall quiet. People began to pay attention, because this young man was anything but ordinary. "This kid's full of himself," someone whispered from the gallery, as Malik stood up, clutching a pen and a worn stack of notes, walking slowly toward the witness stand. Officer Daniels, the man who had arrested him, sat firm and unshaken in the witness chair. His voice was steady, his demeanor confident, as if his testimony alone should be enough to seal the verdict. I saw him hot-wiring the vehicle, trying to connect the wires under the dashboard. When I told him to stop, he ran. Malik didn't argue. He nodded once, then asked calmly, "Officer, how far were you from the vehicle when you claim to have seen this?" "About 20 feet. And what time was this? Around midnight. Malik turned to face the jury. 20 feet, at night, through a closed car window. The courtroom fell silent. Then Malik held up a photograph, an image of the car's dashboard. The wires were buried deep inside the console, hidden beneath the steering column. Officer Daniels, can you point out, on this photo, exactly where you saw the wires? Daniels hesitated. They're inside, underneath. Exactly, Malik said, his voice still even. So how did you see me hot wiring anything from 20 feet away, through a closed window, in the dark? There was a pause. Then, the quiet murmur of voices began to ripple across the room. Malik looked up at the judge. Her expression had shifted, no longer doubtful, but curious. And in that moment, the audience began to understand. This young man didn't just know what he was doing. He was dismantling the system, one carefully chosen question to the defense at podium, a time. His eyes sharp, cold with precision, after that first blow. He knew one contradiction wouldn't win back their trust. He needed something bigger, a full picture. Your Honor, Malik began, his voice calm, but echoing with purpose. I'd like to call a witness, Mr. James Thompson. Mr. Thompson walked in, with hesitation written all over him. He glanced quickly at his wife, the registered owner of the car allegedly stolen. He didn't look like a man eager to speak, but he also didn't look like a man who could keep staying silent. Malik asked, "Are you the legal owner of the black sedan reported missing?" "Yes, I am." "On the night of the incident, did you give the car keys to anyone?" Mr. Thompson swallowed hard, then spoke softly. I gave them to my nephew, Alex. He needed the car for a date." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Mrs. Thompson turned toward her husband in disbelief. The prosecutor jumped to his feet, objecting. This testimony was not disclosed in advance. But Malik only needed one more question. "Sir, the car you lent out, it was never actually missing, was it?" Mr. Thompson nodded, almost whispering. "It was just left there. We hadn't reported anything yet." Malik turned to the jury. "Then what is this grand theft auto charge based on? A car that wasn't broken into, wasn't stolen, just borrowed." Silence. The truth didn't come crashing down in a burst of rage. It landed like a quiet, undeniable fact. And in that silence, something shifted. Malik hadn't just planted doubt in the charge. He had cracked open the system itself. When the surveillance footage played across the big screen at the center of the courtroom, the prosecution smiled with confidence. A grainy image of a slim figure opening a car door in the darkness flickered to life. This, they believed, was their ace, the visual proof that Malik was the culprit. "That's him," Prosecutor Grayson declared firmly, pointing to the screen. "The behavior is clear. What's left to argue?" Malik didn't argue. He simply stood, holding a printed still from the video, and walked slowly to the witness stand. "Mr. Harris," Malik began calmly, addressing the lead investigator, "can you confirm, do we clearly see the face of the individual in this video?" Harris hesitated for a second, then shook his head. "Number. The footage is too blurry. The face can't be identified." "Then how did you conclude that person was me?" "Based on the build, the clothing, and the context." Malik paused, then turned toward the jury. "Not DNA, not fingerprints, just guesswork." He lifted his chin. "And what's worse, police never investigated anyone else but me." A low murmur swept through the room. In that moment, Malik wasn't just dismantling the prosecution's strongest piece of evidence. He was exposing something far more dangerous, that the system hadn't chosen a suspect based on proof, but on prejudice. A lone black boy, standing before a biased system. And yet, with every word, every calm step Malik took, he was forcing that system to look in the mirror. Your Honor, I'd like to call my next witness, Alex Thompson. The courtroom fell silent. Alex, a young man with an uneasy expression, stepped up to the witness stand. He avoided eye contact with his aunt and uncle. His hands were tightly clasped together. Both Prosecutor Grayson and Judge Simons looked surprised. The name hadn't appeared on the original witness list. But Malik didn't flinch. He walked forward, voice steady and composed. Alex, on the night of the incident, did your Uncle James lend you the car? Alex gave a small nod. Yes, I needed it for a date. And after the date, where did you park the car? Near my house. But when I came back, it was gone. I thought it had been towed. Did you report it to the police? I was scared. I hadn't exactly asked for permission. A quiet ripple spread through the courtroom. Did you see anyone suspicious near the vehicle? Alex hesitated. There was a man. He looked sketchy. I felt something was off, but didn't think much of it. Malik turned to the jury. The car wasn't stolen. It was loaned by a family member. No break-in, no force. And now we have testimony that someone else was seen near the vehicle that night. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a blade. Every detail Malik had been carefully stitching together was now forming a different story. This wasn't Grand Theft Auto. This was a misunderstanding. And Malik, step by deliberate step, was guiding the courtroom out of the maze of assumptions. The courtroom began to fade. Malik stood up. No one called him. No one urged him forward. He stepped into the center of the courtroom like he knew. This was the moment he had to speak. Your Honor, Malik began, his voice calm but weighted with truth. I want to explain why I ran that night. Judge Simons and Prosecutor Grayson both looked up. Malik continued. The man chasing me was in plain clothes. He didn't announce he was law enforcement. No badge, no ID, no siren, nothing. He turned to face the jury, eyes steady and unblinking. To me, in that moment, he was just a stranger running at me. I thought I was about to be robbed, maybe even attacked. So I ran. I reacted to protect myself, not to resist arrest. The air in the courtroom grew heavy. Jurors glanced at one another. For the first time, they didn't look so sure about what they once believed. And if he truly was a police officer, Malik said, then his first duty should have been to protect, not to make me so afraid that I had to run. A deep silence fell. No interruptions, no smirks. Malik's explanation wasn't dramatic. It was simple, logical, human. But it was enough. Enough to dismantle the charge of resisting arrest, a charge built on a grave misunderstanding. And in that moment, for the first time during the entire trial, they didn't see Malik as the defendant. They saw him as a person, a young man, asking, just once, to be heard. There was no lawyer standing beside him, no one guiding him through. Malik Johnson stepped into the center of the courtroom, alone. But this time, there was no trembling in his step. Judge Simons gave a soft nod. You wish to testify on your own behalf? Malik nodded. Yes, Your Honor. He began slowly. No theatrics, no tears. But every word from Malik cut through the thick air of prejudice like a sharpened needle. I'm not a criminal. I was just a kid walking home late at night. I saw a car left open and thought someone forgot to lock it. When I leaned in to check, a man came running toward me. No badge, no words, no warning. I got scared, so I ran. He turned to the jury, not to beg, but to let them see. He had nothing to hide. After I was arrested, I didn't understand why I was being charged with stealing a car. I didn't understand why no one wanted to hear what I had to say. So I started learning. I read the law. I studied my own case. Not because I thought I was smarter than anyone, but because if I didn't defend myself, no one else would. A long silence followed. No gavel. No whispers. I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking to be seen fairly. By then, even the judge had stopped writing. Every eye was locked on the skinny boy standing alone in the middle of the courtroom. And for the first time, they didn't see a defendant. They saw someone brave enough to stand up, smart enough to understand the law, and strong enough to rewrite his own fate, with nothing but truth. The courtroom was dead silent as Judge Simons turned to the jury. "Have you reached a verdict?" The jury foreperson stood up. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was Malik Johnson, not guilty. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then the room erupted, not in applause, but in breathless relief, in muffled sobs, in stunned silence from those who had once dismissed him as just another foolish black kid trying to play lawyer. Malik stood motionless. His hands clenched the sides of his chair. His gaze lifted, not out of pride, but because finally he could breathe. Judge Simons signaled for quiet. When the room settled, she looked at Malik, and for the first time, her eyes held no judgment, only recognition. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice low but firm, "I'll admit, at first I thought this was a joke. An 18-year-old defending himself. I assumed I knew how this would end. But you proved me wrong." She paused, drawing in a deep breath. "You didn't just defend yourself. You made this entire system stop and reconsider how it sees people. And that is rare." Malik bowed his head, not in gratitude, but in respect. And in that moment, across living rooms, coffee shops, and phone screens, YouTube viewers everywhere knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Not just a black boy proven innocent, but a courtroom forced to bow to the truth. Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting soft light across Malik Johnson's face. He was no longer the trembling boy in an old suit, standing alone before the court. He was now something more, a young man who had done the unimaginable. Reporters swarmed. Cameras pointed at him. Everyone wanted a statement from the boy who defended himself and won. But Malik didn't shout. He simply smiled and said one quiet sentence. "I didn't do this to be praised. I did it for those who never got the chance." Just then, a voice called out behind him, "Malik!" It was Alex Thompson, the young man whose silence had once led to Malik's arrest. His face still held traces of guilt, but in his eyes, wordless gratitude. "I'm sorry. For everything." Malik placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, no bitterness in his voice. "It's not your fault. But because of this, I know what I need to do." Alex nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "And you're going to be great at it." Malik looked into the distance, eyes fixed on a future only he could see. "I'm going to study law, and one day I'll return to this courtroom. But next time, I'll be standing to defend those no one believes in." In that moment, YouTube viewers didn't just witness the end of a trial. They witnessed justice take root. They saw a young black man refuse to be a victim. Instead, he turned his story into a legacy of courage, of truth, and of hope for every voice left unheard by the system. Malik Johnson's story didn't end when he walked out of the courtroom. In truth, that was only the beginning. The opening chapter of a powerful message. That silence isn't surrender. Sometimes, it's the strongest form of resistance. Malik wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't someone with status or power. But he had 3 things: intellect, determination, and a belief in the truth. And with just those three, he did what many believed was impossible. He forced a harsh, unyielding system to listen. The boy they once laughed at in open court now stood as a symbol of awakening, not because he shouted for justice, but because he stood his ground, asked the right questions, and never backed down. Every question he raised, every detail he exposed, didn't just dismantle a case. It revealed deep cracks in a system we're told is untouchable. When the video went viral, thousands didn't share it just because a kid beat the odds. They shared it because they saw themselves in him. Those who've been doubted, dismissed, and devalued simply because of where they come from, or the color of their skin. Malik's story became a reminder. If an 18-year-old, with no law degree, no attorney, no help, could awaken the conscience of a courtroom, then any one of us can be a voice for the truth. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was the first step in a larger conversation. That maybe it's time we look again at the system itself and ask, who is justice really serving?